Here today with my man, Glen Trusty, owner of Dr. Roof, a client I would call a friend now that we've been working with for a number of months. And I want to really dive into Glen's story and, what working with him meant to his business and for Contractor AI. Really, again, kind of giving the full disclosure on the experience that we provided and the experience that he went through. Just ahead of this conversation, I'm going to share with you guys really quickly what the scope of work was, what we covered, what were some of the challenges were from Contractor AI side. So Glen runs a very successful 7-figure business, has been around for 25 years. Really, again, from the outside looking in, totally, the dominant figure in his market. And when he came to us, he had a very specific problem. And it started off with, sales being down. Started off with, having his team not being connected, and not performing the way that he had expected. And again, when I heard these things, immediately I realized, having worked with him in the past, that we were in for a very big project, because a lot of the things that I was seeing and that I was observing in his business and the problems he was asking me to fix were challenging. And they weren't challenging from the technical side of me fixing the actual problem, which was CRMs and bringing in efficiencies with AI, hiring processes. All those things were very easy technically to do. What the challenge was is that his team had been working together for a long time. He has a large team and relatively resistant to change. So a lot of this conversation today is going to be about how we adapted and got over the resistant to change, and what the story was and what the challenges were. So with that said, Glen, I got my first question for you. What was the biggest challenge before working with me? What was from your perspective?
Well, it would have been a sales process for sure. No process and no structure in place for our sales program or to our sales team. Also, a big challenge for us was knowing where we were spending our marketing dollars and understanding what our conversion rates looked like, where our leads were coming from, and what success we were having with them. We truly had no idea because we were unable to really track the data. And not necessarily that we were unable to, we weren't using any tools to do so. So we just knew that we were making money, we were working, and let's just keep going. And kind of that blind leading the blind a little bit. So those were one of our big challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And, can you tell me, what was the hesitation for you going into this project? Knowing the kind of the scope of what we were going to change, what was your hesitations?
Some of it was my own abilities to understand the technology, and listening to it was a little intimidating, kind of knowing little about it. I guess the unknowns, the changes. I felt I was going to be very challenged by my team because of change, technology, or just trying to change what they're doing. People get complacent and comfortable. I knew that was going to be a challenge. And again, I want to reflect very much on myself as an owner. When things have worked well for so many years, you tend to get kind of comfortable with that, and you think, well, it works. Why?
Absolutely.
If it's broken, don't fix it. I think that's a mentality that we can very easily adopt as an owner, is if it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, you don't know if it's broken if you're not really looking for it. And what we really discovered is that we really had a very broken system, and it needed to be completely refined. And to overhaul a company of this size and its process and its people, you're talking about a major project. You're talking about a major challenge. And it may be one of the greatest challenges, honestly, in my business career of almost 26 years that I've ever faced. No bullshit.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my observations as well. And I mean, again, making a change in any business of any size, of any minor or major, it has the same reactions. It has the same feelings and emotions. One thing that I observed with Glen was his ability to sit in the uncomfortable zone. And I mean, this project was over months. Lots of times when, again, I know you were feeling uncertain and unclear and frustrated and stressed. But one thing that I can, say to your credit, never once gave up, never once lost focus of the outcome that we were working together towards. And again, it uncovered some things. Maybe could you share what those things were and what what happened as a result of uncovering those things? So, talk about your staff and stuff.
Well, things that it uncovered. Well, it uncovered a lot about myself. Again, I learned a lot about myself. I think in the beginning, I thought this was going to be, maybe for lack of a better term, it was going to be kind of a just add water scenario, and it was going to have the cure. Jay had the cure, and it was going to be easy. I think you referred to it as a silver bullet. Okay, well,
yep.
It's not the way it works. It's not the way it works. You got to apply yourself. And I thought in the beginning, well, this is just going to kind of get set up. We're going to go through this. The team's going to adopt to this. It's going to be no problem. Holy shit, that blew up like crazy. The team got very resistant. I actually lost some, what I would have thought were some good employees through this process. And it's honestly kind of damaged some internal relationships in my company with myself and some of the people, because they didn't have my vision. They didn't see it. They didn't understand it. And really, they didn't want it. What they wanted was what works for them. This is something that changes and works for a company. This is long-term. This has longevity behind it. And even as the world is changing so rapidly in technologies, this is way out ahead of the curve of what people are doing in the market. And I know this because I've been in the market for, again, almost 26 years. And, some of those challenges at times, I'm not going to kid you, man. I mean, I laid awake at night. I was stressed. I was really wondering if this was the right thing to do. And a lot of my team was supporting the fact that it wasn't the right thing to do. Although in my heart of hearts, I knew that it was. And I got a lot of support from you, Jay. And that helped me kind of keep my head and my wits about me and helped me keep some balance, because there was times when I thought that I was burning time and money, and I know what I'm doing, and it's always worked before. So why fix it? It's not broken. Well, it was very broken, but I didn't see it that way. I struggled to believe it. I had to really go in my own internal, being to understand that there was way more to this than just a system in place. And it was me. It was myself. So I was looking for the problem, and I could find it if I just found a mirror, right? Sometimes you got to face the fact that you're your own worst enemy, or you're standing in your own way. Your people, they're employees. They're going to be employees. But if you can't get out of your own fucking way, then it's going to continue to be damaging. So there were some challenges. Yes, absolutely.
For sure. So one of the first things that I remember is a conversation that you and I had about what the possible risks were. And I mean, in the original scope of work, which we followed step by step, hit every milestone, made sure that we were keeping on track. But the first conversation that we really had heart to heart was what needed to change personally for you. You being able to step back from the business, being able to trust your staff to actually do the right things. And we knew that we had to build structure in. And whenever we're going to change the rules for a team, there's going to be fireworks, right? We knew that going into it. And we also knew that you as well had to start to move away from certain things that you had your hand on, like, seeing every quote and I've really seen huge growth there for you, really kind of sitting back and trusting this process and trusting that we're moving forward. And I mean, again, we've had plenty of conversations late at night and, back and forth. And I must say that I encourage anyone out there that really struggles with change to listen to what we're saying, because a lot of the times we think of shiny objects as being the answers to our problems, and shiny objects don't serve you, right? Like if I come in and just drop software on your team, knowing that it would take all of this energy and you would be on your own, I would have failed you. And I think there's a lot of shiny objects out there where owners think if I just did this, I would get this. And I think, again, going into this, we had a really good view of what the possible problems could be. And in terms of countering those, I mean, sticking to the plan, sticking and really looking at the outcome, and working through our own discomfort. I mean, credit to you. 4 months of being in your uncomfortable zone, having things that were over your head and feeling overwhelmed. you held in there and you held strong. And I wish more contractors were able to do that instead of reverting back to a new shiny object. Because you could have very easily been like, hey, this is too painful. Let's find something else that's quicker and easier. And you didn't, right? And the benefits are going to be huge. I mean, again, we went from a company that was, in a situation where, if they didn't change, something bad's going to happen, and we're declining in revenues, to now having some unfair advantages, which we're not going to share all of those with the audience. But we're setting, Dr. Roof up with completely unfair advantages in their market that they're going to be able to take advantage of for years and years to come. And again, the outcome that we wanted was Glen being able to have more free time, Glen being able to trust the process and the system versus, completely dependent on a person that, again, he had some unclarity about and wasn't sure if the things that are supposed to be done were getting done. So credit to you, Glen. Great story of really working through, the uncomfortableness, which is going to come no matter what. So even though you weren't actually, building the software, any of that kind of stuff, the experience of the change was still massive, wasn't it? It was still huge, right?
Yes. It's and I mean, it still is, but it feels different. It's almost like that adage. There's light at the end of the tunnel. I feel like I can see. You see the bigger picture now. For a while, I had my blinders on and I kind of had tunnel vision, and it was a struggle. And it doesn't feel that way when I wake up each day. Now, this morning I came in and I sat down just as an example, and I'm like, okay, I'm really working through what I've got. I'm looking at everything, and I'm seeing it. I'm seeing this come together now. Really adopting it and putting it to use. There's the next step. Like, we're at the biggest milestone, I think, of this whole thing.
Yes.
The biggest challenge, the biggest milestone being that once this thing gets going, I think this is where the rubber meets the road. I think this is where it's really going to happen. And I have confidence in that. I mean, I believe in that. And that's a big part of doing any project like this, man. You got to believe in it. You got to believe that you're doing the right thing. Because as soon as you get all those doubts in your head, which I went through some of that, it just, it slows the process. It slows the project. And it cost me some time. I cost myself the time because I allowed myself to get so deep into, doubting that I was doing the right thing. So yeah,
we had actual team members, again, like resisting it completely. So we really did this whole project with the brakes on, but we were able to push through. And again, in terms of, giving everyone an idea of the scope, we completely overhauled his sales department first, implementing a full end-to-end sales playbook, creating SOPs, creating structure, which he was able then to hire a sales rep that's come in and, a complete A player to support them on that. We also built a very badass quoting tool that's going to increase our speed to lead. So being able to get people back quotes within, days or within a day instead of a couple of days, and have those quotes do a really good job at helping our sales team close, as well as having an in-house sales team, which Glen's never had before, that's supporting the closers and optimizing their time in the field so that they're closing more deals. The last thing that we've really, actually we've got two more things, but the speed to lead. That's been a big factor for many contractors. And again, where we kind of have implemented an unfair advantage is that Glen will have 24/7, 365, be able to contact and have a conversation and qualify leads and get them into calendars where that didn't exist before. So again, comparing that to anybody else there, Glen takes in a high volume of leads. We knew there were delays in getting back to customers. That's going to be obsolete within 5 minutes. Those leads are being contacted. Genuine conversations are being had, and they're being booked into calendars. On his hiring side, we implemented ProHire. Glen, ProHire is again, it's an unfair advantage for anybody that's trying to compete against him in just the way that we're able to process a large number of applicants, giving them a quality experience and really lining them up to have A players come into his business. So my last question, Glen. What would you suggest to anybody that's considering, this kind of support or considering this kind of project in their business? What would you suggest to them?
Well, I mean, wow, that's kind of a long one. Okay, so if what would be really interesting is to have the conversation about part two of this, explaining to you what we used to do and how we did it, and
Hmm.
then the results of what we're already seeing, and we haven't even
Hmm.
really put the whole thing into play. But if you're that guy that's doing the bidding, doing all the paperwork processing, doing the sales, if you're that guy that's running yourself ragged like that, I've been that guy. I've been that guy 14, 16, 18 hours a day. And I've been doing it that way for years and pretty addicted to my work. But, the advice that I would give you, man, is if you don't have systems in place, if you don't have something like this in place, you are going to burn yourself out or run yourself so ragged that you're going to be unable to really run the business and grow the business at its best potential. Because what happens is you get so locked up in the daily grind of everything. And what you do is you find often that it's easier to just do it yourself. It's kind of that old adage, if I want something done, I'm going to do it myself. Well, if that's the mentality that you have, as I have, and have done for years, it's going to cost you dearly. My advice is you've got to put processes in place. You've got to have a sales process. You've got to do team meetings. You've got to have coaching calls with your team. You've got to make sure that you're tracking the data. You have to watch these things. One of the most important things I think in business that I always overlooked was watching the numbers. I never watched the numbers. I just kept my blinders on and kept working and kept plowing the field. And often I'd look up and go, well, how the hell did I get here? And never really taking the time to stop and look at, how did I get there? Where's the data to support it? So if you don't have these things in place, my advice is, man, you're probably going to end up spinning your wheels and running in that hamster wheel for a long goddamn time before you figure it out. But once you do, I'll tell you, it's I don't even really know how to describe it at this point, because I feel relief. That's all I can tell you right now. But I think give me another month, and I think part two of that conversation is going to be the way we were doing things and the results that we could report versus what we're going to be able to report and the results that we're getting from it. I think that's going to be huge. I've spent so much money on marketing. When I'm pulling leads, when I say marketing, like AdWords and all those types of things, and it's pretty much shit. I've just in the last few weeks, I've seen more leads come through. Now you got to take the time to qualify them, but we weren't doing that before. We weren't doing it before. Right. We were just throwing money at it. We were just throwing money out there like it would we were catching it on fire. Might as well have been. And now we're seeing these leads that are coming through. Not only they appear more qualified, more quality, but we're getting an abundance of leads where we used to run 7 to 11 or 9 to 11 leads a day. You know, this economy's got us down to if you're lucky, if you're getting 9 a week. And then all of a sudden we started turning on some of these different tools and we saw an increase in our leads. We saw them start to pick up, and the quality of the lead was also better than the shit we were getting from these SEO companies and stuff like that. So,
yeah, because we cut a lot of those. And again, in terms of, getting clarity around it, like that was the outcome that we set out to achieve. And, for me, from my perspective, the solving the problem for Glen wasn't a problem. I mean, I run a business fair size as well, same, like identical to Glen's in his size. And I've experienced it on my own. I went through a decade of, these same problems, these same tribulations. I've, experienced the resistance to change. So I was the whole time I could call the next shot and the next play. And I was like, Glen, this is what's going to happen next. And even if he was resistant, a month later, he's like, man, how'd you know that? Like, I was like, we've been through it. Right. So again, it's been a lot of, a lot of fun now looking back on it. Not so much fun when I was in it, because I knew I was in for it, and I knew what what we would be facing, and I couldn't have had a better partner to work with in Glen, and really, again, getting over his own fears, getting over his own resistance to change, leading his team, which again, I wish, the contractors are out there. You can't always be right, and you shouldn't try to be. Your job's not to be right. It's to get it right. Okay. When we can let go of egos and get out of our way and really, give up some control, because, it feels out of control when somebody's leading you to something that you've never seen, never touched. And to be honest with you, 99.99% of contractors have never touched or can't even fathom what we've done. When you have to lead someone through that, especially someone strong-willed like Glen, there is, that is the challenge we got over. And I mean, for me, working with someone like Glen, and watching him as a person grow and develop has been, it's been a lot of fun now. And, going forward now, we're sitting on top of our wins. But I want everyone to really listen to that story again. Don't think for 1 second, okay, that this is easy. All right. Nothing's easy. Nothing worth having is easy. Okay. But it can be simple, right? At the end of the day, there's people that have solved the problem you're trying to solve, right? When we trust the process, we trust the plan, and we're willing to stick through it no matter what, all right, results come. And that's where we make big, growth, both personally and in business. So I can't wait. We're going to have another call with Glen. I just wanted to take the opportunity to document this because Glen's now, and I already know because I'm about 90 days ahead of the plays, that in about 3 to 4 weeks, Glen's going to be a raving fan. So there's my shot. There's my call out. And anybody that's listened so far, hope you enjoyed and I hope you listened well. And we'll talk to you guys soon.